All right, we're back
Yeah,
again.
we're doing
Hopefully
right.
it stays, but
Just
I'm trying to stay zen about it.
it's fucking mysterious, man. Yesterday it went for like almost 5 hours.
Well, Wednesday
No
we did
problem.
a show and it was like almost 4 hours long and we didn't
Yeah,
have a single problem. Like
weird.
Wednesday night.
I
I
don't
don't
know
know
what
what
it
it
is.
is. And like I said, we thought that it was just because, oh, it's high traffic times, like, Saturday night or whatever. But then we would do some shows like in the middle, like on Tuesday afternoon, and it would fucking
Yeah,
crash after 20 minutes. So I don't know. It might be our Wi Fi connection. It could be a lot of
I don't
different
know. None
things.
of our smart TVs have any problem, and we're on a
Not
LAN.
not usually.
We're on a
Yeah, I
LAN
actually
cable.
did even like buy a LAN
Yeah,
cable, so I couldn't, because I heard that was better, like not to use Wi-Fi. So it
yeah.
actually is hooked up like right to the router. I don't know what the problem is. So I don't know. I don't think it cut off too much. But I was basically saying that yeah, so they knew pretty much like between 8 and 8:15 that he had jumped out of the plane. Because the plane kind of went to doink and like that little light came on. So the plane lands at 10:15 p.m. at Reno Airport, which, like I said, that's where they were supposed to land to refuel. And all the authorities were there. The fucking FBI was there. Everybody. They weren't actually sure. I mean, obviously the crew were like, "Yeah, we think he probably jumped out." I mean, because he asked for the parachutes, and then that whole thing with the tail of the plane happened. But they weren't entirely sure. So after they landed, like all the authorities came on and they searched the entire plane and saw that indeed he had jumped out. So during the investigation, the FBI they found a whole bunch of latent fingerprints, like inside the airliner. Now, how many of these belonged to Dan Cooper? No one really knows. They
You know
did.
that wasn't his name.
Well, no, that's
Yeah,
just what we're calling him
yeah. That's
because
what he called himself.
that's what he called
Yeah,
himself. So we're just assuming that's obviously not what his name was. They also found the tie that he'd been wearing, the black tie, which was a good clip-on tie because I guess he couldn't be bothered like tying a real tie. So they found that, and it had a tie clip on it. And they also found 2 of the 4 parachutes that they had given him. One of these parachutes had been opened, and some of the lines had been cut out of it. They're not really sure. They thought that maybe he had kind of cannibalized some of the parachute, like to wrap the money up, maybe. Because one of the crew members did say that they'd seen him like tying something around his waist. They're assuming that he
yeah.
put the money like in a bag that he made and like tied it around him to jump.
Tied something to himself, and then there was another. So there were 2 parachutes missing.
Yeah.
That's odd. How big was the bag of money? Do you know?
Well, let's see. It was 10,000 $20 bills. So pretty big, probably. Well, not that big, I guess. But
He
kind of heavy.
he would have known better. He would have known better enough not to put a parachute on a bag of money and then throw it out holding the ripcord. That wouldn't work.
No.
See, he must have just opened one for some reason to make sure that it was a real parachute, and then threw it out.
Well, yeah, because you'd think, and we'll get into this a little bit later too, but you would think, and if he was thinking, the reason they think that he ordered 4 parachutes was because he wanted the crew to think that he was going to take a hostage that would jump with him, which would discourage the FBI from giving him dummy parachutes.
I don't think that's what it was.
Although I will say that they actually did give him a dummy parachute, but they say accidentally.
Yeah, I don't think
One
that's
of
what
the
it was.
parachutes was a dummy.
I think he wanted 4 parachutes because I think he thought that they would booby trap all 4 of them,
Yeah.
and he would open one up and find the booby trap.
Yeah.
Okay, and if he saw
Yeah,
that they
that
were
could
all
be as
booby
well.
trapped, he'd go back and go, "Okay, you gave me fucking bum parachutes, you bitches. Let's try this again.
Yeah.
Give me 4 parachutes. They all have to be good." That's what he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he wasn't going to take. Didn't have anything to do with taking hostages.
No, I don't know. No, I don't think he was going to take hostages. I think that he wanted them to think that he was going to take
Right.
hostages so they wouldn't give him shitty parachutes.
Right. That was partially what it was. But then he also wanted to check, and that's what happened to one of those
Which
parachutes.
seems a very wise decision when you're jumping out of a plane at
Right.
10,000 feet in the dark.
So that means he was fully trained on how to
Check your
fucking
parachute.
how to fucking wrap and fucking what do they call it? Load up a parachute.
Yeah.
I forgot how it is.
Well, you
Pack
it.
a parachute.
You pack
Yeah.
it.
He knew how to pack it. So he opened one of them to make sure that everything was good. And then he threw that out. The reason why I threw that out He threw it out because he didn't want the authorities to know that he had checked, because he was going to do this again. See, that's how well thought out he was. He didn't want the authorities to know his MO, because he was going to do it again. You know, maybe next year.
Well, and we'll get into this too, but one of these suspects later on did actually pull a heist very, very much like this. So they don't know if it was the same guy or if it was a copycat, but he did it almost exactly the same. So we'll talk about that.
Because he heard about it, probably.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying that they don't know. So they're going to talk about that.
I think fucking whoever DB Cooper was, he was the originator of all this shit. He fucking had this shit all figured out. And he was trying to cover his tracks at the same time. He didn't want the authorities to know that he opened a parachute to check. But they must have assumed that. But it's the same thing you would do in the military.
Well, because he left it on the plane.
The opened one?
Yeah. He left two of them on the plane. One of them had been opened.
He left two on the plane.
But it looked like he had opened it and like kind of cut
So where are the other two?
He took them with when he jumped.
He took one. He threw one out. He put one on and jumped with it. And then he cut another one open to get some fucking cords out of it to help tie something to his waist.
Yeah.
Tie the bag. Yeah. But one of them he just threw out.
Yeah, maybe.
He threw it out because he didn't want people to know that he opened it up to check it.
Yeah.
He just did not. It's just something you do in the military, and every military guy knows what I'm saying. You just deny your enemy every scrap of information you can. He's thinking, yeah, they would know that I would check them, but I'm gonna leave them in doubt. You know.
Well, the thing about Dan Cooper, like I said, it's even though he might have died during the jump, and I kind of suspect he maybe did, you can't deny that he figured some shit out. Like, this was a pretty well planned heist, and I will note that even if he did die, they still haven't found his ass, and they haven't, so obviously he did a decent enough job that they never found out who he was.
There's two problems with this plan, though.
There's a problem with every plan.
First thing is that it's a night jump on an unprepared LZ. In other words, the landing zone is not pre-prepared.
Yeah.
So he doesn't know where he's fucking landing.
Yeah, that to me would be the scariest thing.
Very fucking dangerous, okay? The other thing is he's jumping from an aircraft that is not designed for the jump. You can jump out and get caught up in an eddy and fucking bash your head onto the fucking part of that fuselage, and it could kill you, and or knock you out, and you never pull the fucking ripcord.
Well, yeah.
See, things could go wrong.
The reason that he picked that particular Boeing 727 was because out of all the commercial airliners, it was the easiest one to jump out of without getting bashed in. I mean, you still could, but it was a lot less likely, like the way that where the stairs were situated and whatnot. So he actually did know enough about the plane to pick that one in particular. For that very reason, because it was the easiest to jump out of while it was in mid-plane.
Telling you people something, I'm ex-airborne, but I never jumped. Not out of an aircraft with a fucking parachute. We would jump out of helicopters on rappel lines. All right, that's what the 101st did. But I know enough about airborne operations and jumping to know that it's fucking dangerous. It's dangerous even when you're doing the right thing. Paratroopers get hurt all the time. They make contact with something on their way down. That's the biggest fucking threat. And usually they hit, and they do something called a PLF, and it's a way of hitting the ground with your feet, then your knees, and your thighs, and then your fucking hips, and then your elbows and the side. You're kind of using yourself as a shock absorber when you hit, to absorb the impact, because you're coming down fast, even though you got a chute on, Well, most paratroopers fucking lose their careers doing that PLF. Something bad happens. They hit something that's on the ground where they can't do the PLF properly. In other words, like they maybe blown into a tree, or worst case scenario is something like a damn metal bars or power lines. There's all kinds of bad things that could happen. Or you come down, you hit in the trees, and your head hits a fucking tree. I think, I don't know, we might have some paratroopers in the comment section. I think at the time of impact, you're probably going about 20, 25, maybe 30 miles an hour. That's a significant fucking impact.
Yeah, hitting
Yeah.
the ground at that doesn't sound
Yeah.
very fast, but hitting the ground at that speed,
Yeah.
not so fun.
And then,
I mean, shit, man, I hit the rear of a car with my car going maybe 25, 30 miles an hour, and the
Yeah.
front of my car would look like an accordion.
Yeah.
So, just goes to show. It doesn't seem fast, but it is.
something bad happened to him. He had an impact with something, either the fuselage of the aircraft, or the tree, or ground, or water, and he drowned. Something like that.
It kind of bums me out that he put so much like thought and balls and shit into this, and then it just makes me sad to think that he maybe just like smacked into the plane or like fucking hit a tree or
He
something.
jumped out into the darkness.
That's a bummer.
He jumped out into the darkness in a desolate area, not being able to see the landing zone, on an unprepared landing zone, which is telling me right there, trees. That's what he hit. And that's fucking very dangerous. And
I mean, it seems like if you were going to do this, I mean, yes, it's much harder to find you if you don't have a pre-planned landing zone.
yeah,
But on the other hand, if you don't have a pre-planned landing zone, it's like you land in the middle of the fucking forest. What the fuck are you going to do? You don't have any food or water. You're not dressed for the weather. You don't have anybody to pick you up. It's like you're just like wandering around in the fucking woods and you don't know exactly where you are.
well, you walk in any direction long enough in the United States, you hit a road.
That's
Once you hit a
true.
road, you
Maybe he
follow
just was like, yeah, I'll figure it out when I get down there.
I think he kind of had an idea of more or less where he was, but he just jumped off into the darkness and landed into a bunch of trees and got tangled up, maybe broke his back on some limbs. Anything could have happened. Or he cut himself free from the tree and then fell 30 feet and fucking broke his back, or broke his leg and was able to walk out. There's a lot of bad things that could happen. Or he lands into the damn water and he's wet. And he walks around for a little bit.
And it was cold. It was late
He
November.
walks around for a little bit and
In
dies of
Seattle.
hypothermia. There's a lot of bad things that could happen. He didn't think certain things through, evidently. He thought about the heist, but not how to extract himself out of the LZ.
Which kind of seems like the most important element. I mean, I would think.
Well, it might not have been his main plan. Maybe his main plan was to go to Mexico City. And this was more like his
Plan B.
back or plan C.
Yeah.
May have been something like that.
He's like, fuck it, I'm just going to jump out.
Fuck it, I'm going to jump out.
And take
fucking
my
hope for the
chances.
best. And maybe before he jumped, he's go, well, over in that direction, I see some lights. So I'll just walk in that direction once I hit.
Yeah, maybe he
Something like
was
that.
planning to go to Mexico City because he did seem very specific that he
Right.
wanted the plane to go to Mexico City. And he even like agreed, hey, yeah, we're going to stop at Reno to refuel and everything. So
Right.
then for him to just like jump out
Yeah. This might have been
at a
plan,
random place.
This might have been plan B or plan C.
Yeah, I could see that. He's just kind of like, well, let's
fuck it.
abort that mission.
Right. And then he
So-
was probably looking out and he's like, I see a city over there. This would be a good place to jump. And he just opened the thing and on his way down, he's looking. He goes, okay, it's over there. It's over there. And he pulled the fucking ripcord and went in some trees and somehow didn't make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right. So, as I said, so the FBI was investigating. They had a bunch of fingerprints. Weren't really sure which of them belonged to the, hijacker, obviously. But a couple of the crew members, I mean, they had spent a great deal of time with him, so they were able to give really, really good descriptions. And actually, the two crew members, the two flight attendants that had talked to him, they gave separate accounts of what he looked like. Like they were even in different cities and everything. Like when they did that, like when they sat with the sketch artist, and the sketches that they like looked almost exactly the same. So they're pretty confident that that was exactly what the dude looked like. Now, when they first started investigating this, the cops and the FBI and everything like that, they had like fucking 800 suspects for this shit, like to start it. And even nowadays, I think there's still maybe 1,000 or some shit like that. Not all of them are super serious. But so they were looking at like, between 800 and 1,000 people. They were able to winnow this down to about 24, 25 people that were a lot more serious contenders. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, even though the dude gave his name as Dan Cooper, it's right there on his plane ticket. You can see a picture of it. There was a newspaper writer, and I guess he mixed up the name of the hijacker, or the pseudonym that the hijacker gave, with a dude named D.B. Cooper, who was one of the early suspects, who was later dismissed of the charge. They were kind of like, yeah, it wasn't him. So this newspaper reporter was like in a rush, I guess he had a deadline or something, and so he like confused the two names. And for whatever reason, I guess because DB Cooper sounds a lot more distinctive than Dan Cooper. So now everybody knows him as DB Cooper, even though that's not the name that he gave. So I just thought that was like really funny. And it was just like one newspaper article and everybody just picked it up and ran with it. I don't really know.
Sounds cooler.
That's what I'm saying. It does sound a lot cooler than just Dan Cooper. You know, Dan Cooper just sounds like a kind of a generic name.
Just anybody, yeah.
So, so as I said, they weren't really sure. Obviously, they're going to start looking around on the ground where they think he might have landed. And they actually did a good job trying to triangulate where his landing zone might have been. However, there were a lot of factors that made that task a lot more difficult. They're pretty much, well, they're like, it's a massive area to search. And it was kind of, a lot of it was kind of remote. They're like, you know, we weren't sure exactly what altitude the plane was at. We weren't sure. Thank you, Trevor. Got to head out, but look forward to picking this back up later. But man said I should leave a super chat.
That's right. Man said you should leave.
Man, that's a callback from way back in the day. We need to bring that back again.
Yeah. Man
said I could jump out of a plane with $200,000.
I gotta keep reminding myself of that. Man said I could.
Man said I could.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the best fucking excuse for everything.
Just excuse for anything.
You can
Why'd you do that? Man said I could.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're just like, okay, so we weren't sure exactly like what the altitude was exactly. You know, they knew pretty much when he jumped out, but not exactly when. They're like, how long did he fall before he pulled the ripcord, if indeed he did pull the ripcord. So the thing about it, like as I mentioned, they had the two Air Force pilots that were following the commercial airliner. And they said they didn't see anybody jump out. But like I said, the visibility that night was really, really shitty. Like it was kind of storming. It was really cold. It was really, really dark out. So they didn't see him jump out of the plane. No visual. They didn't have anything on radar. So they weren't exactly sure. So like I said, the area where he potentially could have landed was massive.
Brad Jones says, yeah, but there'd be a white parachute. You could find it. No, it's not that easy. If he makes it down in between the trees then obscure the parachute, even if he's dead. If he's alive, if he makes it alive, his standard thing to do would be to collect the parachute, bundle it up into a ball, and kind of bury it so you can't see it. That's the same thing a soldier does. You don't leave the parachute just sitting there. You take it. You hide it. But no, it's harder to think. It's harder to find than you would think. You'd have to look directly at it, and from a high altitude, you wouldn't see it.
Yeah, and this is like a massive area, and it's a pretty wooded area too, where they think that he might have jumped out.
It could be sitting on top of a tree partially, with him hanging dead, and if you weren't low enough, you wouldn't see it.
Yeah.
Like, trying to find somebody out in the ocean. It's a lot harder than you think. And you're looking at the surface of the ocean and you can't see the person.
Well, yeah, shit, man. There's like whole fucking ships that have gone down that they still haven't found nowadays. Like from hundreds of years ago.
Well, we're just talking about somebody on the surface in a dinghy. A helicopter can fly right over them and they don't see him.
Yeah.
Because they're at a high altitude. So he's a tiny little dot.
Mango says DB Cooper is Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, somebody needs to write that movie. I'm sure someone already has. Someone at the Sci-Fi Channel. But one thing that they did, I thought this was really interesting. The FBI actually did a recreation, and they got the same pilot, the same plane, or the same type of plane, and they went up to the same altitude, same speed, everything, same flight path, and they had a kind of a sled or something like that weighed approximately what DB Cooper weighed, and they pushed it out the back of the plane because they wanted to see where it landed. You know what I mean? So they were actually able to, and they were trying to figure out too, like what time they think he jumped out. So they think it was about 8:13 p.m. So that kind of helped them like narrow down the time, which, maybe made them have like a smaller area that they had to search for this dude, whether it was a body or whatever. So from the initial kind of investigation, they thought that he had probably landed somewhere right around like on the southern side of Mount St. Helens, near Ariel, Washington. Now, so they start like looking all through, and it's like wilderness, like I said. And they also went around. There's some farmhouses and shit like that out there. And they went house to house and asked if anybody had seen him. They ran like a whole bunch of patrol boats, you know, to in the reservoir nearby, and all this other shit. They found nothing. They found no sign of him. Nothing from the aircraft. Nothing. They also did, you know, a whole bunch of aerial searches. They had helicopters. They have all kind of shit. They did find something. They found some broken treetops looking things, and they found some kind of plastic pieces and maybe something that might have been part of a parachute, but it wasn't definitive. And I guess after a while, they decided that that didn't have anything to do with anything. It was just like some random shit. So again, they found nothing there.
You guys got to imagine this. You come down in the middle of the night, even if you walk around, even if you make the landing, you walk around for how long until you find a road, all right? Then you find a road and follow the road. What happens when you're on the road? Eventually somebody in a car might drive by, or the road takes you to a place like a gas station or a town. How do you make contact with somebody there to get out of there? You're going to have to approach people. Hey, I need a ride. Can you hire to take, you know, can you call me a cab, or can you take me to the bus station, or I'll give you $10,000 to take me somewhere. He's gonna call too much attention to himself. You're gonna see this dude.
Yeah.
So,
well, I will get into something later on where somebody claimed that exactly that happened.
That happened. Okay.
But and it only came out like a couple years ago.
Okay.
So we'll kind of get into that.
Yeah, you'd have to bribe somebody on the road to take you somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's risky. As a robber,
it is, because you don't really, because you're sure going to be all over the fucking news, probably.
Well,
I mean,
you're trusting your life to this stranger. He say, "Yeah, I'll take the money," and then he takes you to the cops.
Yeah.
Or something, or tells the cops. Yeah, you don't know. You know, you don't. If you were planning this mission, you wouldn't want to leave anything to chance.
Yeah.
See? And I think he planned it pretty well, dealing with the airlines and dealing with the police and jumping out. But his plan to extract himself from the LZ is not very good. It's weak.
That's what I was thinking. Like I said, it's, you know, it seemed like he planned the rest of it so carefully, and then this was just kind of like, fuck it. I'm just going to jump out wherever. I'm not even planning. It'll be fine.
I think he planned to jump out somewhere near Mexico City in a fucking crowded area where it'd be easy for him to catch a Mexican cab to some kind of a damn hotel.
I mean, I would have thought if you were going to pull, if you were going to pull this off, like fly to a country where there's no extradition treaty. Seems like the safest move. And somewhere where you're kind of familiar with, I guess. Brad asked how and when did you serve? When and where did you serve?
So about me?
Yeah.
90 to 94, U.S. Army, 11 Bravo. I was in Camp Greaves, and I was at in Camp Greaves, Korea, with the second ID when the 506 was attached to them, and then I was at Fort Campbell. From Fort Campbell, got deployed to Sinai, Egypt, and then got out in 94. Okay, good.
Brad also asked, has there been a movie made about this? I don't know if there was a movie. I mean, it was on Unsolved Mysteries. There's been like a whole bunch of documentaries made about it. I think there have been like a couple of movies. Somebody mentioned Without a Paddle that maybe have been like kind of loosely based on it. I don't know if there's been like a factual movie made about it. It seems like it comes up on a lot of crime shows and shit like that.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Jennifer. In Canada. That's my name too, Jennifer. Not Canada. So, all right. So they found like no, you know, in the place where they thought he might have landed, they didn't find any evidence to suggest where he had gone. They didn't find a body. They didn't find anything from the plane. They didn't find anything. So, so after shit thawed out in 1972, which was always funny to me because I grew up in Florida and we don't have nothing freezes here. So it's funny to me that it's like,
snowed here about 8 years ago.
Yeah, but it's like, yeah, we got to wait until like a few months until all the fucking frozen shit thaws out before we can look for any missing people. That's crazy. Because, like I said, that doesn't happen here. So it's like, I don't know. It's funny. But so yeah, so everything thawed out in 1972. So then they sent out a whole bunch of other, they had like fucking soldiers, they had Air Force people, they had all kind of volunteers, and they spent like months and months and months looking for, not only they dredged all the lakes, they'd like fucking looked through all the woods and everything like that. They didn't find anything. They did find one thing. They found a skeleton in Clark County. These two women found it. However, this skeleton, after they did forensics on it, turned out to be a murder victim, Barbara Ann Derry. She was a teenage girl who had been abducted and murdered. So they found her, so that's good. But they didn't find, I mean, it's not good she got abducted and murdered, obviously, but it's good that they found her body accidentally while they were looking for DB Cooper. So, but they found jack and shit. They found nothing. So at this stage, the FBI, as I said, they had taken kind of microfilm pictures of every single bill that they had given to him. And they started giving lists of all the serial numbers of all the bills to, I mean, they released them to the public at one point, but I think at this point they had like all these businesses and casinos and shit like that. And they just gave them a list and they said, if any of these come up, call us immediately because somebody's spending this money. So that's what they did. So that's what we're going to track him. Like I said, that was like, just like the Lindbergh kidnapping. If you know anything about that, they track the serial numbers on the money. So basically the airline decides they're going to offer $25,000 reward if anybody brings in some of the recovered money, like, that leads to his capture or whatever. And like I said, a little bit later that year, they released all the serial numbers to the public. And, just encouraged everybody, hey, look at your money. I even remember like seeing pictures on the internet of like, big billboards and stuff. Hey, look at all your $20 bills and see if you have any of these, if you have any of these serial numbers, because they'll give you like reward money. Now, 1972, obviously someone's going to take advantage of this. So you get to like two con men and they counterfeited some $20 bills with those serial numbers on them. And then they went to a reporter for Newsweek and they were just like, hey, these are we found some of these fucking DB Cooper money and like give us $30,000 like for an interview. So they like scammed $30,000 out of this guy because one of them said that he was DB Cooper, but it wasn't. So at this point, like a year goes by, 1973, early in the year, no one's found any of the ransom money. None of these serial numbers have turned up. So, pretty much they re-release this shit to the public, tell everybody to look at their money, gave everybody a bunch of rewards, shit like that. And then, it just kind of went on and no one found anything. Now, I'll get into a little bit later on, because some of the money was found later on, but I'll get into that a little bit later. So, as I mentioned, they had triangulated the one place where it was most likely that, it was in a large area where DB Cooper probably landed. However, when they kind of looked into it more, like a little bit later on, like in kind of the mid 70s, they're like, okay, well, maybe that was inaccurate. He's like, because the pilot, I guess that he thought that his flight path was farther east than it actually was. So they kind of got together with a bunch of other experts and shit like that. And they kind of found out, okay, well, maybe, he didn't jump out over here. It's like, they were trying to figure out the wind direction and everything. So it's like, actually, where he probably jumped out of the plane was actually a lot more southeast of where they thought it was initially. And they think that this was maybe around and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, the Washougal River. So yeah, they think that maybe he jumped out around there. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the FBI is this is no longer an active investigation as of 2016, but if you still have evidence, they're still accepting it because, like I said, statute of limitations has not gone out. So, basically, let's get into what physical evidence they had, because they do actually have some DNA evidence, and we'll get into that a little bit later too. The very famous sketches of DB Cooper, which are considered very reliable because the crew members that gave them separately, And, you know, and they had spent several hours with him, so they were like pretty sure that they knew what he looked like. They thought that he was about 5'10" tall, weighed about 180 pounds, probably in his mid-40s, or looked in his mid-40s. Had swarthy skin, so he was kind of a little bit dark-skinned, still a white person, but a little bit dark-skinned, and close-set, piercing brown eyes.
T just showed up.
Oh, hey.
What's up, T? Yeah, and let me see. Mango said they did a movie called Pursuit of D.B. Cooper in 1981, and then Michael Schaefer came in and said, yeah, they did. Search Of did a fucking episode, too.
Yeah, I thought they had.
That In Search Of episode was the shit.
I need to watch that again.
Yeah.
I should have watched it for this. I watched the Unsolved Mysteries, but...
There's something creepy about fucking In Search Of. I've tried to watch some of it on some of the older ones on YouTube, and the transfer isn't very good. Imagine if they came out with a DVD or Blu-ray version of fucking.
Maybe eventually they will, if there's like enough of it. Because I mean, look what they did with Unsolved Mysteries. It's like, you know, they recently just released they have their own YouTube channel now where they put all the fucking episodes on there.
Yeah. A lot of money to be made. Of course they should have done. They should have done that a long time ago.
Nostalgia, man.
You're right.
I mean, they should totally fucking.
But I'd like to have
clean that shit up.
They have like a really good copies of the entire Search Of series. Fucking Leonard Nimoy.
I could listen to Leonard Nimoy like talking about anything.
Made everything sound creepy.
He did. Kind of like Orson Welles made everything sound like important and true.
Yeah,
even if it was Nostradamus.
That the great king of terror was coming. Fucking Parmesan wine.
I told you guys before, look up the Parmesan wine fucking outtakes. How he even like got through that entire commercial. The people that shot that commercial must have been like, God damn it, Orson. Yeah. This took like 5 days. It should have taken like 3 hours.
I'm glad that we were around to in the right time to understand that era, because that era is now long gone, and it will probably never return.
Everyone's era is long gone eventually.
Yeah, you know that era was that you had some dudes that could just seem important.
Yeah, all you had to do, you just had to say some shit with kind of a gravelly voice. You had some conviction.
Yeah.
You could say whatever crazy bullshit you wanted to say, and people would be like, yeah, I suppose so.
You'd even watch the Academy Awards. I think what it was is it's because you didn't see celebrities that often. You only had a few channels of television.
Now you're just like, fuck,
now they're like, fuck you, get the fucking out of here. They're all on Instagram, and you know who they are.
Why am I seeing your face every 5 seconds?
All the mystique is gone, you know what I mean? It was like...
Yeah, there's no mystery.
Yeah, it was like a rare occurrence to see a celebrity that you liked, because they were trying to fight over airtime just in a couple different channels, and everything was canned. Canned as shit. You know, nothing was fucking realistic. Nothing was like it was in real life. It was just a world of fantasy. So you didn't really know who the people were, so you could blow them up into something that they weren't.
Yeah, because they seemed like greater than
they actually were. You're right.
Sure.
Because when you see fucking Orson Welles in the outtakes of him making those Parmesan wine commercials, that motherfucker was loaded. Loaded and fucking up. Fucking up every few minutes. I mean,
where even am I? it was that level.
That dude made me seem intelligent.
Well, that's the thing. I do kind of feel like you didn't get a lot of... I mean, it's not like nowadays, like you said, where everybody's filming everybody, so people just show their ass at like every opportunity. Because, which in a way, I kind of like that better, because you're
there's no illusions.
Yeah, you're not like building up this weird, thing around a person.
We kind of lived in a world of fantasy in a way back then. Like, for instance, like I was a big fan of Billy Idol, but you rarely ever saw him. Maybe he'd show up on fucking David Letterman. You stay up all night to fucking, oh man, Billy Idol's going to be on David Letterman. And you see him for a few minutes and he's gone.
Yeah.
And it's not like that shit was recorded and you can say, play that back. Play it again. You couldn't play it again.
Yeah.
You know? It's not like you say, I want to hear all of Billy Idol's fucking interviews from everywhere in the world in the past fucking 5 years. That's YouTube. Television wasn't like that. You just had to guess what was going on.
Yeah, you missed it. You were kind of...
You missed it. It was over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a different era.
I don't know. I'm conflicted, because like I said, it is kind of nice that, the people still had some mystery about them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. In some ways, I think that that's kind of unhealthy, because you're seeing them as like not the same species as you almost.
Well, what was weird is that you kind of assumed that they had it a lot better than you, and they were fucking better at shit than you were, and fucking that their life was more exciting than yours. And in some ways, maybe it would have been because they were going to better parties and shit. But they weren't
had more money.
But they weren't that. They had more money than you, but they weren't that different from you.
And well, no, of course, everyone's a human. They got to take a shit just like everyone else.
And if you spent a couple of days with them, you'd get sick of them.
Yeah, and they probably had super annoying, fucking personality quirks, just like everyone does.
So then you'd be like, oh, man.
You were only seeing them at their best. Right. That's the thing. Well, why do you think that tabloids and shit like that do such a brisk business in pictures of celebrities without their makeup? We just saw them going out to get cat litter or something like that, and they didn't even bother putting makeup on. They're just out there in fucking sweatpants. And I'm just like, can you imagine... I can't imagine. I don't even, dude, I'm not even famous, and I don't even like to go to the grocery store with that makeup on, okay? So I can't imagine like being super famous, like being somebody like fucking Angelina Jolie or whatever. And then, you know, you just are known for looking like fucking beautiful all the time. And then it's like, dude, I just got to run up and get some fucking, you know, pepperoni or something like that. And then like paparazzi are there like taking fucking pictures of you looking like, you know, hammered crap. And then it's all suddenly it's all over the front of the National Enquirer, you just looking like not even like you. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
T's tripping out. Yes, that the outtakes from the Parmesan wine.
That's where I saw
that. That is on YouTube. Still be there. And then she goes, Leonard.
It's so funny.
Yeah, it's fucking great.
Poor Orson Welles.
Then T is also having a sexually charged reaction to the mention of Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, I kind of have that too. Yeah. I mean, you know, look at I got life-size Spock back here.
See, here's the thing.
I like good Spock too. Both Spocks are good Spocks.
Soap is also in the comments right now, and fucking I got Soap onto the Star Trek the original series, and you know she's a youngster from our point of view, and she'd never seen those, and she's going through this old comfort television, and she was like appreciating how good fucking Star Trek was. And she started to develop a damn crush on fucking Spock.
How can you not? How can you not?
And here's the thing, man. Here was the story behind this. When they first started making that series, they kind of cast Kirk as being kind of like the dashing romantic lead of the fucking series. But they were doing market research like they did back then because experts ran shit back then, not children. They tried to find out what the audience liked, and they found out that single dudes liked Kirk, but women, and married women and single women, had this thing for fucking Spock.
Duh.
Right. So what they started to do later on in the series,
all they had to do was call me, and I would have told them.
They started to write Spock into fucking romantic fucking situations in the fucking series where he's trying to resist. He's trying to resist these women. Ain't that some shit? Because women have this fetish of trying to go after a dude who's saying no. That I'm too logical for this. No, we cannot be together. Oh no, Spock, you can do. And all that shit started with fucking Nurse Chapel. Nurse Chapel fucking loved.
Well, the thing about it is that here's a dude. You don't want somebody that's like just completely indifferent to you.
Yeah.
You don't want that. Like they don't give a shit. Yeah. You want somebody that you know they give a shit deep down, but they're trying so hard to resist it because it's like you're too much for me. Women find that very, very appealing. They don't like dudes that are just kind of like, no, I don't give a shit about you at all. That's not the same.
And Spock had that forbidden fruit aspect to him.
That too.
Where he was something. It was a trans species or an interspecies relationship. You really weren't supposed to be hitting that. That wasn't human. See, that was part of it too. So
I don't have a problem.
Women like all that kind of slight fucking kink. You know, it was like a kink thing. You know.
Well, shit, man. Even nowadays, what do you think? I don't know if it's the largest, but it's definitely one of the largest segments of written erotica, which is 80-90% women purchasing that. Is like werewolf shit, like creatures,
werewolves and fucking vampires, and
like
shit.
Beasts,
and then
women having sex with beasts.
Yeah,
what it is. I mean, not beasts, but like human beasts,
humanoid fucking
sure, like werewolves, like essentially. Yeah, that is a massive market.
Now, growing up partially in Brazil, I look at the Spock character, and to me, it's just the foreign guy syndrome. And it's absolutely true. If you're cute and you're foreign, you just get it. And if you have money, you just get all the girls.
Well, there's that exoticism.
Yeah. Yeah. They had Brazilian dudes trying to kill my ass over this. I was taking their girlfriends. Yeah.
Because you were American. So
I was American and I had money and I fucking had a car and I was looking good and fucking, I was a teenager. So I just fucking get everybody's fucking girlfriend. I was competing against other teenagers. Not married dudes, or married people, but
yeah, I was like,
I'd get all the fucking
wives.
girls. I just show up in a fucking brand new little fucking VW bug and pick up the girl. And those guys, I hate that motherfucker. I gotta kill that motherfucker. Yeah, I took your girlfriend, bitch. Fucking it took off.
I'm an American.
Yeah.
Bang! I'm dropping my nuts right there.
Well, it wasn't that. I spoke fluent Portuguese and everything. It's just being foreign.
Well, yeah.
Had I been French, it'd have been the same way.
Yeah.
Had I been any other,
Yeah, you're not from here.
You're not from there. And that's really, women love that. But I think guys do too. The foreign girl.
Well, like I said, it's just kind of like you grow up around people. It's like you don't necessarily want to like marry the people you grow up around because it's like, you're kind of sick of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just kind of like this exotic. They don't even have to be that exotic. They're just from another state or whatever. And they just turn up and it's like they have some different shit going on. And it's like, oh, this is intriguing. You're not like all the losers around here. You know what I mean? Familiarity breeds contempt, right? And so if you've grown up around people your whole life and you're just used to people being one way and then somebody turns up that's a little bit different, that's like really intriguing.
Tina said Spock should have been the kiss of the Uhura, not Kirk.
Ooh.
I don't know.
I like it.
They were building.
Although in the new movies, they set the two of them up as a couple, and I kind of dug that.
They were actually, on some of those episodes, trying to build something up between Uhura and fucking Kirk. Because remember, fucking Uhura would say some shit like, I feel much more brave when I hear your voice and all that kind of shit. She having him at the helm and shit. She was crushing on him. But she was professional. She was trying to. And evidently, they were insinuating in those same episodes that fucking Kirk liked her, but he couldn't show any emotion towards her because she was on the bridge. She was like close bridge shit. You know what I mean? Now.
Well, yeah, everyone's maintaining.
But you have to understand that there's not a lot of continuity between all those episodes. They're written by different people. They were writing them as they were going. So some people wanted to push it into one direction, and then somebody else would like to push it into another. They were meant to be standalones.
Which they are. I mean,
they are. Yeah.
It's better to watch them like when you get a context of all the characters. But I think the reason why that series still works after all this time is because of the characters and because of the interaction, particularly between Kirk and Spock and Bones. Yeah. And I think that's kind of like the heart of the show. So then they can just kind of put them in any situation. And even any writer that comes in, it's like, well, generally we know that Kirk is going to do this and Spock is going to do this and Bones is going to do this. So that's kind of like where the conflict comes from. So as long as you kind of keep to those parameters, it's still going to be good and it's not going to be like too fucking out there. You know what I mean?
Soph chimes in. She says, I'm more partial to Kirk, actually. The Spock is great too. Ultimately, it's all the writing. The banter between the two is my favorite part of the show. Yeah. Spock and Kirk is
the three of them.
The bromance
with Bones and stuff like that thrown in there too. Because I love him because he's so like crotchety. I love that.
It was a trisexual bromance.
I know, that's my favorite thing too.
Yeah.
That's something that can't be replicated because that's not just the writing, although it is that, but it's also the actors. You can't. It's really, really hard to replicate that with different people because it was just the three of them. Their personalities.
He comes back and says, "For me, it just seemed like I'm so in control of his emotions. Unlike Kirk, that kind of drives me up the wall. Very sexy. Yeah, that's what Jenny thinks too.
Because the thing about Spock is that he's not a sociopath. He doesn't have no emotions. He's not like Ted Bundy or anything like that. The whole Vulcan thing is that their emotions were so overwhelming that they had to learn to control them. Otherwise, they'd just be like flipping their shit all the time, right? So there's something like really appealing about that is, he's just like a cauldron of seething emotions like underneath, but he's like keeping it all under control.
Brad says,
but any minute he could like bust out.
Brad Jones says, I'm getting my T levels checked next week. Thanks, Tom. That's right. Get that shit checked. I fucking called my boy.
Well, everyone should.
If you're a man after the age of 35, you're going to start feeling like not really all that great. 40, I felt great. I felt great until I was about 47. And then I just started not feel quite right. Feel like you're going away, like the fucking hand of death is coming after you. Go get that shit checked, because that's it.
Yeah, he started telling me that all the time.
I felt, man, I think I'm dying.
Yeah.
Death is coming. My end is coming. I just felt the shadow of death fucking cast over me. It's just because your hormonal levels have dropped. That's what it is.
Well, why do you think I kept like fucking...
I knew something was wrong. I had this shit checked, and that shit was wrong.
Yeah, I was like, look,
Very
dude,
wrong.
You're not dying.
I got the results.
Like, you could live another like fucking 30 years, man.
Felt like I was
40
dying.
years. Crazy.
It feels like the elixir of life is being drained from you. And in a way it is. In a way it is.
I have just drained 1 year of your life away.
If you ever saw a movie called The Fiendish Plot of Dr. Fu Manchu, he was trying to make the elixir vitae. Okay, so he could go out and fucking, and be the man he was. That's fucking TRT. That's what that is. I was listening to these guys talking about it. Oh, they're full of shit. But then the more I started hearing about what they were talking about, because yeah, there's something to that. I started to study the endocrine system. Went and had that shit checked, and sure enough, bing! My shit came back like a fucking 80-year-old man. That's how low my levels were.
Yeah, it was way low.
Way low.
I was even surprised at how low it was.
That's why I felt like I was dying.
Well, that explains it.
And what kicked it off is watching my dad almost die.
Yeah.
Because depression starts a fucking cycle of it. You're depressed, so your testosterone level declines. And then you feel bad, so you feel more depressed, and it declines more. That's what happened to Elvis, man. As soon as he lost his career at 35.
I think it was all his peanut butter and
nana sandwiches. Happens to a lot of dudes, you know what I mean? Fucking happens to dudes coming out of combat. They're living up high on adrenaline and feeling great. And they go back to flipping burgers at McDonald's and fall apart.
I think it's maybe, and I'm not saying like, because, women have their own issues, but I think it's better than it used to be, I will say. Back in the old days, I do feel like men really defined themselves too much, in my opinion, by their careers and by what they did when they were young.
It's the self-esteem.
Yeah. So, you used to see it like a lot back in the old days. Like as soon as a dude would retire when he was like 55 or 60 or whatever, like a couple years later he'd be dead because he didn't have that purpose anymore and he felt like he was useless.
Yeah.
And I think I don't think it's just, just a man problem, but it was something that a lot of men seem to have. They attach too much importance to their jobs, their careers.
Well, it's not that it's attached. It's genetic. It's hormonally supported. It's genetic. Men don't create children. All right. Their priorities are more centered around machines and things that they do and things that they can make. That's really that's the difference. And it has to do with hormones. It does. It's
weird though, because from a biological standpoint, men can actually father children into their 70s or 80s if they really wanted to.
Yeah,
women cannot do that.
But you have to look at what men are doing that. The men that are doing that would be called patriarchs.
Yeah.
They're usually they're basically tribal warlords. They've conquered an area. They have a whole harem of wives of different ages, and you can keep them going. Well, in a situation like that, they're on natural TRT. They're constantly winning. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, because they have
stimulation.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it is biological. You cannot defy biology. It's science. They want to fucking erase it because they don't like it. It's not politically correct, but that's what humans are. We are what we are. And I've embraced it. And it's dumb. All right, biology's dumb. Biology isn't moral. But once you start thinking that way, it all starts to make a lot of sense. It's real deep when I became shallow.
Yeah, you mentioned that before.
Yeah, I used to be real deep, and then I realized that would lead me astray. When I went back to being shallow, it all started to make a lot of sense.
I can't be shallow. It's
just shallow and superficial.
I'm not genetically programmed to do that.
Be shallow and superficial. You'll do better.
I'm pulling the biological card out. I'm not biologically equipped to do that kind of thing.
Shallow and superficial always wins.
And honestly, it's like, as much as I complain about the way that I'm like, it's like I wouldn't, if somebody came to me and said, hey, do you want this different personality? I wouldn't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In a weird way, I kind of like the way I am, even though it's like even though it's a pain in the ass. I'm a pain in the ass to myself. You know what I'm saying? So can we get back to DB Cooper?
Yeah, it's time to get back to DB Cooper. We're almost done anyway.
No, we're not.
No?
Look how much longer I have.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Oh, shit, because you're going to talk about the investigative shit, too, aren't you?
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to talk about all the suspects and stuff, too.
Okay.
All right. So, as I said, on the plane, he left his black clip-on tie, the tie clip that was on the tie, and also some cigarette butts, 8 of them, actually. Now, you'd think that you would be able to get DNA off the shit. However, the cigarette butts were subsequently lost sometime in the 70s, during the investigation. So, no good there. But the interesting thing, too, was that later on in 1978, in late 1978, which if this was like 7 years after the hijacking, they actually found it was like a little card, and it had instructions on how to lower the aft stairs of a 727. And they were actually able to determine that this had very likely blown off of the plane, like when he opened the stairs, like to jump out, that it might have like been swept off the plane when he did that. So they found that, so like a hunter found that, like out in the fucking forest. It was right by a logging road. They found it near Castle Rock, Washington. And this was like right around where the flight path would have been. So they assumed that it probably came off of that plane. So they did find something that they're pretty sure came off of that airplane.
Hold on, I gotta say something.
What?
Gareth, there's a guy in that comment section. We went to high school together. He was a cop, all right? He's been off the force for a while. He says the cops usually die within 5 years after retiring. So he's only got 3 years left until the end of sleep. I'm telling you, Dan, go get your levels checked. Get on TRT. You'll feel a lot better.
I have to give him a shot every week.
Yeah, you'll feel a lot better.
Right in the
arm.
And
it's just starting to kick in now. I mean, I felt my positivity got better pretty much instantly, but I'm just now starting to feel it coming in. It'll plateau out in another 3 weeks, and just run it like that. Go ahead and fucking take care of yourself, man. Because, another thing that I realized is that I feel like you drop weight fast, too.
Well, dudes always lose weight.
You just kind of go back to an earlier state,
Women's bodies just want to hang on to fat. No, you might need it for baby.
Yeah.
Even though you're old.
You TRT, get back in the fucking gym, man. Don't be a fucking loser, dude. Drop all that weight. Bet you'll get better fucking cardiovascular. You'll feel better. Fucking, you'll be like it was back when we were at Trenton High and shit. You'd be like, well, fuck. She walks by now and I look at that ass. It's like fucking a heat-seeking missile. Damn, she tried to get out of the bed. I said, come here. Remember that morning?
Yeah, 2
mornings
mornings
ago. I woke up,
man.
I was feeling good, man. Where are you going? Where are you going? She says, no, I got to go. And says, no. Bring that over
Well,
here.
I was like, dude,
it
just took me a long time to extricate because Pookie...
I let her go, though. She was, like, busy. And I was like, oh.
Pookie falls asleep, she had fallen asleep, like, right here.
I was trying to hit, man.
I know.
It's okay. Shit was fucking starting to come back like the devil.
Well, I was awake for a long time, and then I was kind of like... And then Pookie was there, and I kept waiting for her to wake up and move, but then she didn't. Because I'm such a... I hate to disturb her. I know she probably doesn't care. Or she'll forget about it. But it's like sometimes she'll like to sleep right here and she's all stretched out and everything. And I'm just like, oh, look at her. She's so cute. And it's like, I'm like, shit, man, now I can't get out of bed. So I had just maneuvered I kind of scooted down the bed and I kind of got out around her. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to put my, exercise clothes on. I'm going to go for my hike. I got to put my backpack on and shit. And as soon as I had maneuvered out of the bed, and it took a really long time, so I didn't wake Pookie up. And then Tom grabs my arm, hey, don't go anywhere. And I was just kind of like, God damn it, I just got the fuck out of here. I was trying not to wake Pookie up. Leave me alone. So, it was like that. All right. So where the fuck was I? Okay. So this is so this part right here that we're getting to, probably one of the most famous aspects of the case, and one of the things that really, if anything, kind of deepened the mystery. You would think, oh, hey, we found a clue and now we're going to figure some shit out. But this just made everything more weird and, and we're never going to solve it. So 1980, 9 years, well, almost 9 years, because it was kind of early in 1980. So it was like 8.5 years, more like. So it was 1980, and it was after the hijacking. There's this 8-year-old kid named Brian Ingram, and he's on a little vacation with his family on the Columbia River, and they're at this kind of beachfront sort of place. It's called Tina Bar. I don't know why it's called that. About 9 miles downstream from Vancouver, Washington. And he was kind of scraping around in the dirt. He was going to build a campfire. And he found 3 packets of money. And the serial numbers on this money corresponded to the ransom money. Now, this wasn't all the money, obviously. It was just like a small portion of it. Now, the money itself was kind of disintegrated, but the rubber bands were still intact, which kind of significant. So this was 2 packets of $120 bills each and a third packet of 90, which means that somebody had taken 1 bill, I guess, or 10 bills rather, out of one of the packets before they ended up where they ended up. I'm not really sure how that happened. Now, so these particular bills, this is kind of interesting because even though the bills were kind of disintegrated and suggested that perhaps the money had been dropped in the river and had just washed up at this particular place, some experts that looked into it were kind of like, well, if the money had been in the water, because this was like almost 9 years later, right? They're like, if the money had been in the water that long, or if it had been there that long, the rubber bands would have disintegrated also, but they didn't. So there's always, I don't know, there's always like something kind of nebulous about all the fucking clues that are found in this. I'm talking about the money that they found.
Yeah.
Later on.
That money, okay. I'm gonna let you talk about the money.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things. So, and it's almost impossible because some experts have said, you know, oh, the packets just, you know, they fell in the water and they washed up. But then some of them said, no, it looked like it had deliberately been buried because of the way that the, you know, kind of the ground was or whatever. And the fact that, like I said, the rubber bands weren't disintegrated, which they would have if they'd been in the water that long. Because like I said, it's been almost 9 years since the hijacking. That's how long it took for this money to be found. So they're like, well, obviously it couldn't have been in the water for that long. And some experts said that it couldn't have gone into the water any earlier than 1974, which was 3 years after the hijacking. So they don't know if DB Cooper, if he died and then somebody just found this money and buried it there for some reason, or if it washed up a long time ago and it just somehow doesn't look like it washed up a long time ago. I don't know. So there's like a lot of really kind of like unclear details about the shit. It could kind of go either way, just like pretty much every other fucking fact in this case. So as of this day, as far as anybody knows, this is the only portion of the ransom money that has ever turned up anywhere. As I said, they have all the serial numbers of all the other $20 bills that they gave to him. And as far as anyone knows, none of the other ones have ever turned up anyplace. So the kid, Brian Ingram, his family, they actually ended up selling some of the bills at an auction for $37,000 in 2008 because, hey, that's some famous shit. You know, I don't begrudge him that. They also found 2017, I guess there was some kind of amateur investigators kind of poking around the area. Because like I said, you have to think the area where they think that his drop zone was, not only has the FBI, local police, you know, authorities looked all through that place, everybody's so interested in the DB Cooper case that they've had a bunch of like volunteers going through that shit too. And no one so far has found anything. Other than that money, no one has really found anything. However, in 2017, there were some kind of amateur sleuths, and they thought that they found something that they described as a parachute strap that was really, really old. And then they said they found like a piece of foam that looked like it was from the backpack he was wearing. But as far as I know, that hasn't been confirmed. So I don't know. It just might be random shit that was out there. So in 2007, the FBI came out and said that they had found, or they had obtained a partial DNA profile from the tie that they found, which belonged to DB Cooper. Now, it should be said, and the FBI has acknowledged this, they're like, now, we did find the DNA on the tie, but that's not to say that the DNA necessarily came from him. You know what I mean? It's likely that it probably did, but it could have come from somewhere else. There's really no way of knowing. So they did find like 3 separate samples. However, so far this is not matched with any particular person. But they do have DNA on file, or at least a partial DNA profile. They also put out, and this was in 2007, as I said, a bunch of evidence that they hadn't previously released to the public. They actually released his Dan Cooper's original plane ticket, so people could look at it, and some other like composite sketches and shit like that, which hadn't been released to the public before. And they also said, and as far as I know, this information was not disclosed prior to 2007. They also said that 2 of the primary parachutes that they had given to Dan Cooper, that he had chosen the older one rather than the newer one, which was like better. It was like a sport parachute, and it was like just more technically advanced, I guess. They speculated that he might have chosen the older one because it was a model that he was more familiar with, rather than kind of the new fancy one. He's just like, oh, I don't have time to like figure this shit out right now. This like newfangled shit. I don't know. That's just like some speculation. And from the 2 reserve parachutes that they gave him, he selected the one that was a dummy. Now, this was not an actual parachute. This was one that had an inoperative ripcord. They used it for, training, Now, the FBI says, or whoever gave him the parachutes, they said that they didn't intend to give him a dummy parachute because, like I said, we were talking about that earlier where Dan Cooper was afraid that they would give him some like fucked up parachutes. And so that's maybe why he was checking that one.
Oh, definitely.
But the FBI said, well, the parachutes that we gave him, the one was a dummy, but we didn't intend for it to be a dummy. They got it from like a parachute, like a skydiving school.
Is that the one he threw out?
I don't know. That was one of the ones that he took with him, though.
Oh, shit. He may have been wearing that one.
Well, that's what some people have speculated, that maybe he was wearing the... Although you'd think that if he knew anything about anything, that he would know that was a dummy. Because it's kind of like sewed shut.
Maybe he checked one and said, yeah, this is a good parachute. Put the dummy on, thinking that they were the same. Jumped out. That could be your answer right there.
Well, I thought about that too, but they did say, they're like, look, he seemed like he knew enough about parachuting and about aircraft and everything, because the dummy parachute, it doesn't look like the other it kind of had some markings on it that says, hey, this isn't an operable parachute, please don't use this one because it's just for training purposes.
Maybe he threw that out the back.
Maybe he did. It's like, because they said, he seemed like it was pretty well planned and he kind of knew his shit, so you'd think that he would know that one wasn't usable, because I thought that too.
Unless he was moving fast and didn't
I don't know.
And wasn't paying attention to the little details. That could be a possible answer to this.
I thought about that too.
He
but
might put that dummy on. He didn't notice that it said this is a dummy.
That it's like, hey, don't use this one to jump out of a plane.
He checked the other one and says, yeah,
because it's not going to work.
These parachutes are real. And then he grabbed the dummy, put him on.
It's possible. It's possible.
That's one possibility.
Something else, this is also very interesting, and I actually hadn't heard this because I hadn't been keeping up with this case, for the past several decades. Like I said, the last thing I saw about it was Unsolved Mysteries. That was a long time ago. March 2009, the FBI came out and said that something that they found on the tie, it wasn't just the DNA, which, like I said, didn't match to anyone that they know of yet. But they did do like an electron microscope, like on the tie, and they found all these little particles on the tie. They found particles of bismuth and aluminum, lycopodium spores, unalloyed titanium. And they said this was like it's, fairly common nowadays, but back in 1971, this was pretty uncommon. So they think that maybe Dan Cooper, whoever he was, that this was his tie and that he wore it to work, and that maybe he worked somewhere that did metal fabrication or a chemical company. Some people have speculated that maybe he worked at Boeing because they would have used these particular chemicals, because there wasn't a lot of different companies that would have used these particular chemicals at the time, so much so that it would infuse into the tie. You know what I mean? So some people have speculated that maybe he was like some kind of manager or worked in that field. It was like, aircraft, railroad, anything like that, or, chemicals, anything like that. Because that it wasn't a very common like chemical that you would see in 1971. So they think maybe he was a chemist, had something to do with metallurgy, or as I said, maybe perhaps worked at Boeing, something like that. So let's talk about some of the theories about what happened to this dude, and then we'll kind of get into some of the suspects. So basically, what they're saying, Dan Cooper, he seemed to be pretty familiar with the Seattle area. They thought that probably he was an Air Force veteran, or it seemed very likely that he was. He did recognize Tacoma from the air. And he did know where McChord Air Force Base was and how far away it was from where they were flying, which seemed like something that probably a civilian wouldn't know. What were you going to say?
I'm going to say they're fucking jumping to some conclusions there. Just because he knew what the lay of the land didn't make him Air Force. Most guys that are in the Air Force are ground crew. They don't even get in aircraft that much. All right. Parachuting is not really an Air Force thing. They got a couple special ops units that do it, like rescue type teams, rescuing down pilots. But no, man, fucking parachuting is a fucking Army thing. That's the U.S. Army Airborne. 82nd Airborne Division does it. 173rd does it. The Ranger regiments do it. SF does it, or Special Forces. They do it. That's an Army thing. All right, unless he went to some kind of a class or a school afterwards and did some skydiving training. All right, that's the only thing. You could get skydiving training. It was more rare in 71, but it was there. That kind of shit really was more common in California in the 70s, skydiving. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to be a skydiver in the 70s, where would you go? California.
Yeah.
That's where the hang gliders were, too, at that time. So, I don't think he's Air Force. I think he's Army.
Well, they thought that he had military, sure. He was a military veteran.
Yeah, but I think he's Army.
Mango's asking, did they do a passenger count when the plane landed? Still have a feeling he never got off the craft. He did, though, because they let all the passengers off, because the plane landed after he said he had a bomb. Plane landed at Seattle, Tacoma. They let all the passengers off, and then he was still on the plane with 4 crew members, and they all saw him on the plane, like, when it took back off. So they let all the passengers off, but he was still on the plane. They saw him.
Another thing that makes you think he was Army is because he's awful confident and not worrying about what he's going to do when he's getting on the ground. You know? Airborne infantry or ranger, he's going to be cock proud about getting on the ground. He's thinking that's normal. He's not worried about that. You know what I mean? An Air Force guy would have taken more precautions to just jump out of a fucking plane and land, to do a PLF out in the middle of the woods, and then walk his way back to civilization, where you're talking about maybe a 20 or 30 mile walk, probably, This is something an Army dude would attempt. That's just what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, like I said, they're pretty sure that he was military. Yeah. Was ex-military.
Some kind of airborne infantry. He's going to say, yeah, be on the ground, I'll be fine. Because he has confidence.
Yeah.
I think he died on impact. That's what I think happened.
Well, I think he did too, but like I said, we haven't even got into the suspects yet, so don't jump the gun. But so another thing I want to do, and I mentioned this earlier, but it seems that he knew enough to pick a 727 because of all the commercial airliners, it was not only the one that was, the relatively easiest to jump out of with, minimal risk of harm, just because of the way that it was situated. And because it had an aft air stair like in the back where you could jump out and not risk too much, like, running into the fuselage or the engines or anything like that. But it also had a single point fueling capacity, which you could refuel all the tanks from one spot, which was unusual for the time. It was also one of the few, if not the only, commercial jet airliner that could maintain such a low speed and low altitude without stalling, which he seemed to know as well. He also knew to put the flaps on the wings to 15 degrees, which, as far as I know, was at the time unique to that particular aircraft. So he did seem to know about the aircraft, that particular aircraft. He had done a lot of research on it, and the things that it could do that other commercial airliners weren't necessarily doing. Another interesting thing too is, I found this interesting. Maybe this is where he got his pseudonym from. There was some speculation going around among authorities that he might have gotten his alias. There was a comic book series from the 1970s, and the name of the hero in it was Dan Cooper. And he was a Royal Canadian Air Force test pilot. And one of the covers, like I've seen one of the covers online, it's like a dude jumping out of a plane with like the suit and everything on. So
he saw that.
So yeah, well, yeah. But the interesting thing is that this comic book series is Belgian and it's French language. It was never translated into English and it was never sold in the US. It was sold in Canada, however. So that's where some more speculation came from, that maybe he was Canadian because of the thing that he said about American currency and stuff like that. Like the fact that he made specifically, and the fact that he may have maybe taken his alias from this particular comic book, which, like I said, was not sold in the US at that time and was not even translated into English at that time. So it could be, it was for sale in Canada. So maybe he had seen it there and was a fan of it. Yeah.
That's a good theory.
Well, like it seems very weird that it was a pretty popular comic book in Belgium, and I guess in like French-speaking parts of Canada as well. And it seems very weird that there was like a dude, and he was like a test pilot named Dan Cooper, who was like on the cover.
But we do have to admit that Cooper is a common last name.
It is. I mean, he might have just picked that. He might have just picked that at random. I mean, that might be a total coincidence.
Could be that he just saw the cover of that somewhere in his travels.
Yeah, that's possible.
And he's like,
and just remembered it.
And somebody said, that's Dan Cooper. And he said, look at that dude jumping out. It might have been something that simple.
That's like some heist I want to pull.
Yeah.
That's the name I'm going to use.
Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah, seriously. But, okay, so the thing about it, though, is that even though, like we were talking about before, it does seem like he planned a lot of the early shit about this. Like, yeah, I'm going to wear dark glasses. I'm going to, like, say I have a bomb. He knew all the shit about the plane and everything. But then once he jumped out, it seemed like he didn't really plan it that well. I don't really know. So, and also they were like, he must have known because, as Sarah Ann mentioned earlier, it's like since the Lindbergh kidnapping, which when the fuck was that? In the 30s, right? Like ever since that happened, the authorities kept track of the serial numbers of the bills to pay ransom money. So he must have known that they would keep track of the serial numbers of the money that they were going to give him. So even if he got the money, how did he think he was going to spend it? You know what I mean? Because like they would be looking for him.
Well, Brad said this. He said, why would a guy go to Mexico if you're trying to get back to Canada? I don't know. Well, it could be that he may be from Canada and he's trying to get as far away from Canada as possible. That might be another thing, too.
I mean, there could be a lot of reasons why he was going.
Guy may not want nothing to do with Canada anymore.
Well, and like I said, Canada has extradition with the U.S. and Mexico doesn't. Or it didn't at that time, I don't think.
There's a possibility he could be Canadian, but he would be Canadian Airborne. He'd be Canadian Infantry. Now, who's it? Oh, Mike says, well, maybe he might be some kind of special forces. I don't know that acronym. It's probably something like something kind of like Air Force Special Operations something or other. I don't know what the thing is, though, is that when you're talking about guys that fucking do Halo, which is high altitude, low opening jumps, or any kind of combat jump, if statistically it's going to be Army. It's going to be the 82nd Airborne Division because they're the most numerous. All those other units are tiny, which means it's less likely that he would be from a unit like that. And another thing that would make it less likely is that those little tiny Special Operations Air Force units and Army units, when those guys get out, they don't have any problem making $100,000 a year in these fucking security companies. What the fuck they need to rob a damn plane for? They don't need that. They make money. And also they're lifers. They're in until they're about 40. And then when they get out, they just go into the damn military industrial complex and continue to make even more money. They're not robbers.
I mean, like I said, even though I kind of admire the ballsiness of this heist, I kind of have a lot of admiration for people that, as long as they don't kill anybody, I have an admiration for people that pull off these really like audacious heists, you know?
Yeah. This is not a rich guy.
Yeah, well, the FBI, they probably thought this dude was probably like super desperate for money.
Yeah, this is not a rich guy. This is a fucking working class dude.
Yeah.
All right. He's intelligent though, and he's got an experience in this kind of stuff. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the 82nd Airborne Division. That's what we're talking about. There's lots of them. They're all working class. They have the requisites to do this mission, especially if they have the willpower. And he's 40. So he's not a kid.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Maybe mid-40s.
Maybe mid-40s. So, yeah, he could do it.
Maybe this was his, like, last hurrah. He's like, I just
Maybe.
need some money to retire. And yeah. Well, because like I said, $200,000, it's a lot of money, but was even way more. It was more than $1 million back then. You know, the equivalent. So you pretty much would have been set for life.
I don't think he made it, but at least he went out in a blaze of glory.
Yeah. It kind of makes me sad because even though he's a criminal, I kind of wish that he did make it. But I kind of suspect
it was a daring heist.
I kind of suspect that he didn't.
Well, you got to look at it this way. He wasn't stealing from an average Joe. It's not like he's robbing from a fucking liquor store.
That's what I mean. It's like, die, whatever. Yeah. I don't care. But if you're just
he's stealing from a big company.
Yeah, if you're just stealing from a big company or a bank, go for it. Yeah. If you can get away with it,
if
awesome.
You're willing to do that time.
If you're willing to
do what you want to do. But
if you're willing to fucking jump out of a fucking plane and you don't know where you're at,
possibly get killed,
fucking keep it.
And then spend 15, 20 years fucking behind bars if you get caught. It's on you, bro. Go ahead and do it.
Keep it. It's mad respect. I'm just saying. Yeah. I wouldn't have the balls to do something like that.
Heat.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I think we were talking about that when we were watching the movie too. I said, with these kind of like big heists like this, like I'm fascinated by, because I one of these days I want to do a show about either the Isabella Gardner museum heist, or there was like a really big heist in Antwerp in like the Diamond District, and the dude spent like 2 years like planning the show. Like they infiltrated like all the companies, like they had people working there and like all these inside people, and it was like fascinating. There was a whole bunch of them, and if you are willing to put that much fucking work and effort and risk into it, I almost kind of feel like, you know what? Just let him have it. It's a bank. It's a bank. It's a diamond company. They're insured.
It's still stealing. It's against the law. That's not how you look at it. They're stealing from a corporation. They're going to fight back.
I know they are, but it's like it's not like you're just like stealing a loaf of bread from like a mom and pop store or something like that.
There is a big difference in it. It's a more of a professional thing. The problem it goes from gray to black when you start killing people who are in your way.
Well, like I said, that's not cool.
Yeah,
obviously.
The guys that actually are really good at this kind of shit will kill a motherfucker with a heartbeat if they get in the way. And I'm not really big into killing people for money, especially people that are not a threat to you. I don't have any problem if somebody's trying to kill me, or it's another soldier, or we're in a fight over some fucking kind of fucking dominance over some political thing or whatever, and there's state sanctioning behind it, or you're the founding father of a new fucking country and a damn revolution. That's fucking on the table. That's on the menu. History is like that. People are like that. Going out and fucking blowing some fucking chick's head off to get her purse. No, you're fucking scum. You're fucking scum. Yeah.
Like I said, if honestly,
I wouldn't even. Just like, okay, here's another thing. Fucking Emil and the other guy at the North Hollywood fucking shooting, where they had those fucking machine guns, were robbing the banks, and they were fighting the entire LAPD. They didn't kill any of them, but they were kind of trying to. All right. No, you're gonna kill a cop fucking over some money? I mean, that dude's got a family too. I mean, you're a fucking scum.
Well, that's that's what I'm saying. It's like
scum.
just the people that are like, look, it's just like a dude driving an armored car. So like he's just like a working class,
it's a fucking working stiff
club like you are. It's like they got kids and a wife and shit,
of money,
or a husband or whatever. It's
you're fucking scum. Yeah.
But
yeah,
like I said, that's why I was like so into like these like diamond heist guys and like art heists and stuff. Their whole thing is they don't really want to hurt anybody, but so they just plan it so they don't have to. Like they have this big elaborate plan. It's like, look, we're gonna like infiltrate. They have moles in there that like work.
Let me give a shout out, just because you're talking about the diamond heist. You guys got to see the fucking movie called Uncut Gems. All right, that was It was a Adam Sandler movie of all things, but he does this badass gangster movie. And Hollywood hated it because they didn't like the fucking stereotypes and shit. He plays, and it was based around a real fucking dude who wrote a book about his dad. His dad was a Jewish dude working down the Diamond District of fucking New York, involved in with all these other Italian and Irish type gangsters in the diamond industry, making money off selling fucking bling to fucking rap stars and basketball stars. Called Uncut Gems. It's a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah, it was really good. But
fucking really good movie.
It was one of the most time I have never been that anxious watching a movie before.
That movie will twist you up in a motherfucking knot.
It made me really, really anxious.
This fucking Jewish gangster playing unheard of games with other people's money.
Yeah.
You're just on the edge of your seat. Stealing money to hawk other people's shit, to get money off a pawn in it, to bet it on a game, he just had this fucking money tied up into so many fucking, that was his masterpiece, to bet on this fucking basketball game. It was this movie is just fucking.
Uncut Gems was up for an Academy Award. Yeah, it was. It didn't win, but it was actually nominated.
That movie is fucking one of the best gangster movies of all times.
Somebody asked, did they find any of the money? They did. I just mentioned earlier, they did find a little bit of the money. I think they found a couple hundred of the $20 bills, like kind of buried in a packet, like a little boy found it in 1980, like almost 9 years after the heist. But so far, none of the other money has turned up. Somebody asked too, do we know what altitude the plane was flying at? I believe it was 10,000 feet, because he did ask them. This was one of the reasons that he supposedly like chose the Boeing 727, because it was one of the few commercial airliners that could fly at that low an altitude and could fly at a low speed without stalling. So he basically, when the plane took back off, like after it landed, he let all the passengers off. He said, okay, I want you to fly at 10,000 feet, and I want you to fly as slow as you can go without stalling, because like I said, he was planning on jumping out. So I believe it was about 10,000 feet.
Hold on one second. They're talking about that movie, and Tina says Uncut Gems is great. And then somebody said, I can't stand Adam Sandler. This is not an Adam Sandler movie like you know it. Sandler fucking does a job in this movie. He plays this fucking Jewish gangster that is just, he knocks it out of the fucking park. I can understand that Sandler movies can get on your fucking nerves. This is not that movie.
Yeah, like I can't stand his comedies, but he's actually a good actor when he's not being Adam Sandler.
Yeah, he's not being that Adam Sandler. He's fucking doing this role, and it's fucking great. I gotta buy that movie on Blu-ray. I want to see that again.
Yeah, we saw it in the theater, actually. Yeah. And like I said, I've never been so
That's
fucking...
the best.
Other than Hereditary, I've never been so fucking anxious in a fucking movie theater before.
It's very different, but it's up there with, say, like Goodfellas. Like that.
Yeah.
Like that level. Yeah.
It
had a bunch of undertones in it about spiritualism and shit. And being able to fucking have a soul. It's pretty cool. You'll see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, I think my drink's empty.
Yeah, I'm making it.
All right. So, at this point, like I said, there's a couple different factions. So you have some kind of authorities that are like, well, it's totally possible he could have made it. He could have jumped out of the wood. Like, they kind of were like, okay, well, he obviously knew what he was doing. He asked for the particular parachutes. He knew, he seemed to know kind of the area. He knew the terrain. He knew the flight path. He knew about the parachutes. He knew about the aircraft. He knew like a lot of the technical specs. And he was dressed in a manner that maybe he could have jumped out of the plane and made his way to a road, and someone could have picked him up, and then he could have just like disappeared. They did note that it was a holiday weekend. As I said, he did this on the day before Thanksgiving, because, that would have been in the US, 4-day weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And they're like, had he made it, it's totally possible that he could have like pulled the heist off. He could have got somebody to pick him up and gone back and then just gone back to work on Monday like nothing happened and nobody would know any different. However, the FBI, a little bit skeptical of this. They're kind of saying, well, we are acknowledging that he does seem to have some knowledge of skydiving. He does seem to know about that aircraft. He did seem to know the terrain and everything like that. However, it did seem really, really stupid to jump out of a plane at the altitude, the speed they were going. He wasn't dressed for the weather. I mean, pretty much all he had on was like a white dress shirt and pants, and kind of like an overcoat. It was late November in like the Pacific Northwest. It was really, really cold. The weather was really, really shitty. The visibility was almost zero. He had really no idea where he was jumping out at. It's like not only was it really, really dark, there was also a lot of really thick cloud cover. So they're saying when he jumped out of the plane, he wouldn't have known where he was going. The parachutes that he took with him were not steerable, as in you kind of ended up where you ended up. You couldn't be like, hey, I'm going to go over here so I don't like get impaled on that tree. So there was that. So I don't know. So the FBI are kind of thinking it's like, yeah, he did have some knowledge, but maybe not as much knowledge as people thought that he did, like back in the 70s. Maybe he wasn't quite the genius that everyone thought he was, because only an idiot would have jumped out in those conditions, is what they're saying. Because it was really, really cold. It was like, it was like 15 degrees or something like that, like up where they were. And he wasn't dressed for it. He just had like a dress shirt and pants on and a little bit of an overcoat, and that was it. He didn't have
and a good chance you could land in the water.
Exactly. So it's like, it's very possible, even if he did land, he might have died of hypothermia, for Christ's sake, like before he got anywhere. So there's like all kind of different scenarios as to what could have happened. And honestly, a lot of the FBI dudes said that, it's possible that he never even opened the chute, that he just like jumped out, thought, and maybe it was the dummy chute, like you said, maybe it was the other one, maybe it didn't open, and maybe he just like fucking splattered on the ground and like nobody fucking found him.
There's a 50% chance he put that dummy, actually maybe greater, because he was never found. How much I bet it was a 60 to 70% chance that he had that dummy chute on, pulling it.
That's kind of what I thought.
And it's like, oh shit.
I was like, wouldn't that be shitty? And even though I don't know if the authorities did that on purpose, they said they didn't. But I don't know. I don't know.
Boom. Fucking shit busts open. Money fucking bag goes open. Later on, some of that gets washed downstream, and they find the money a couple miles away up on the bank. Silt covered it up. They're saying it was buried. I don't believe it was buried.
Well, that's the thing. You can't really tell. Now, the only thing that's weird about that, though, was that 10 of the $20 bills were missing from the pack. Yeah. But the other packs were, like, all together still. So they thought that was really strange that,
they were together.
That they were together. Because they're like, look, if his body and all the money and shit like that had fallen into the river and been washed up to where the kid found it, maybe it should have been separated. It's like, it seemed weird that there were 3 packets of it like together, and that some of the bills were missing.
Could have been that he was injured, so he buried some of it to lighten his load. But
that's a possibility. Also,
then he walked out and
then died elsewhere, and then like animals ate him and shit. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that could be. Maybe he survived the fall, but
he didn't make it. If he had made it, he'd have gone back for that money.
You would think,
or he'd have got caught spending that money.
I mean, yeah, the fact that, I mean...
He would have done it again.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'll get into that when we talk about like some of the suspects. Because, yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's the thing. That's one of the things that bothers me is that even though it's weird that the money was found, like some of the money was found where it was found, and it looked like, you know, could it have washed up there? Yeah, but like the way it was found was like unlikely. And the fact that some of the bills were missing, like someone had taken them, I don't really know. Like I said, no one even knows whether DB Cooper was the one that put them there. Maybe somebody else found them, like in the interim, because it was like several years later, right? So anything could have happened in the meantime. But the fact that none of the other money has turned up.
Suspicious.
That is very suspicious to me. I mean, because you would think, I mean, unless he found some way of fucking laundering that shit. Like, well, really effectively.
Well, he did have plans. Maybe he had a plan to launder it.
You would think, because like I said, ever since the 30s, people knew that they could track the serial numbers. So if you were gonna take that amount of money, you would have to have some plan afterwards, like how you're gonna spend it, because you wouldn't be able to spend it. They would catch you. And indeed, like the people that did copycat shit, similar to what he did, like after he did it, they caught all those people like immediately.
The money never resurfaced, so that tells me he died. I
kind of suspect he probably did too. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not sure. I don't know. But let's get into some of the suspects though, because this shit's like fucking fascinating. So obviously I can't cover them all because there's hundreds, maybe even close to 1,000 that they've like looked into over the years. But these are the ones that are kind of like the most talked about, the most serious ones, the ones that have the most to kind of recommend them, I guess. So the first one, let's talk about this dude named Kenneth Christensen. Now, what happened with this one? How this dude came to light? So this didn't happen until 2003. So there's this dude in Minnesota named Lyle Christensen, and he saw a documentary about the DB Cooper hijacking, and it came to his mind that his brother Kenneth, who by this point was dead, he had died in 1994, was actually DB Cooper. Crashed again.
It did?
Mm-hmm.
Just wait, see if it comes back. Because it's still running here. I think it's still running.
Should I just keep talking?
Just keep talking. Yeah, can you guys hear us?
Come on. You can do it. Although I don't think this has ever like come back after this has happened.
I can see it. I can see us talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't see it. It's just it's scaring me.
Let's see what this is all about. Yeah, see?
Yeah, it's doing that. It's doing what it's doing.
I hit the damn mouse, and then all of a sudden we jump forward a little bit.